Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Kalota. I'm here for the Veterans Legislative Voice. Very honored to be here with you guys for the next half hour. Today, we're going to actually be covering the upcoming election and voting stuff that's been going on for a while and what I've been talking about for a while too, because it's a very important thing that we get to do every couple of years. And it's our way to really show our voice and show how we can actually make an effect on our government and how every day we can actually just give that little bit of influence out there. So recently, former President Trump has alleged in the past, or former President Trump has alleged in the past that absentee ballots are associated to election fraud. But, he's tried to encourage his supporters to use it in the past year. So it's one of those things. I'll just preface this as we go into it. Last week, he was interviewed by Bloomberg's editor-in-chief, and he was asked, should Google be broken up? Instead, he replied with, I just haven't gotten over something the Justice Department did yesterday, where Virginia cleaned up its voter rolls, got rid of thousands and thousands of bad votes, and the Justice Department sued them. Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. This stirred up a lot of attention on something that has already been progressing in the upcoming election. What he was referring to was the state of Virginia, more importantly, Governor Glenn Youngkin, had signed an executive order, among other executive orders, on this day, I believe in August 7th. And what it basically is what he did in that executive order was requiring things that the commissioner of the Department of Elections certify that the Department of Elections was conducting a daily updates to the voters list. These updates included comparing the list of individuals who have been identified as non-citizens by the state of motor vehicles to the list of existing registered voters. Sounds simple enough. Many people are worried about, non-citizens being able to vote. That has been a very common thing that has been thrown out there. Local registrars were then required to notify any matches on their pending cancellation unless they affirm their citizenship within 14 days. Honestly, 14 days is really short for a lot of people, especially if you don't have the correct address going on, and all those things can cause a lot of issues. This letter directs recipients who are in fact U.S. citizens and eligible to vote to complete and return the affirmation of citizenship form. This notice informs voters that if they do not respond to the notice within 14 days, they will be removed from the list of registered voters. This process has led to U.S. citizens having their voters' registration canceled. Because you know what? There can be glitches in the system. There could be an old thing that hasn't been updated, or somebody just accidentally picked the wrong thing in the system and have you down as a non-citizen when you're actually been a citizen all your life. I'm someone that actually had a medical diagnosis of male infertility disorder on my medical records, but I was born a woman. So these things can happen. I've also been accidentally discharged from the Army Reserve while I was deployed. Also human error. So these things can happen. Something this small can create a big issue. Now, the reason why the Justice Department has actually filed a suit against the state of Virginia, well, there's a law that had been passed. It's the National Voter Registration Act. Basically says that basically going after these voters and removing them within less than 90 days from the election is actually in violation to that act. Like I said, the executive order was signed August 7th. If you do the math to November 5th, just cutting it close. It still is really close. And so they are actually going after state of Virginia for this. This affects 6,000 people, possibly more, but that's the estimate right now. And why are we worried about this? Why am I worried about this? Because I normally do military and veterans issues. Well, About 10% of Virginia is actually is comprised of veterans. Today is not the day for words. So 10% of the Virginia's population are comprised of veterans. There are over 125,000 active duty military members currently residing in Virginia. Not saying that they are citizens of Virginia and they're registered there, but they could be. And many people that have actually gone into the military so that they can gain citizenship. We all know that sometimes things don't get updated. Things don't get really plugged into the system correctly, and it can cause a lot of issues. So this could actually affect military people and veterans as well. And it can cause a resounding issue out there. The other problem with this executive order by Governor Youngkin is that it kind of validates everybody's fears that non-citizens are actually voting for these elections. Yes, there are some states that allow non-citizens to actually vote, but it's only for their state, local, city, county elections, and they have that specific rule in there for that exception, which they're allowed to do. Federal elections, they still cannot. The amount of people that actually have gotten caught as non-citizens voting for the federal election is less than 1% in the past. So it's not one of those that we really have to worry about right now. So this type of executive order is just fueling the conspiracies and a lot of the theories out there that people are having, and a lot of the misinformation and disinformation. So it's one of those things that you really have to just keep an eye out on, in trying to make sure that the disinformation is not affecting a lot of people. So, but on to military and veterans issues. That's more centered towards them with this upcoming election. So, what's been happening recently is that there have been suits filed currently that I can find is Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Carolina, challenging the overseas votes. This has been something that, President Trump has said that he is against, or he isn't against. He loves the military, things like that. So he's a little wishy-washy. I'm not going to say either way. I'm just giving you what he said. And so the RNC have been filed these suits against these states. And so what they've been saying is that RNC officials allege that the state's election officials have not created a secure system to verify that an overseas voter is an American, and have specifically called out provisions in their election laws to permit spouses and dependents of military or overseas voters to vote in elections based on the residency of the military or overseas voter. As a result, certain people who have never resided in Michigan or perhaps anywhere else in this country, allegedly, are registering to vote and voting in in Michigan's elections, said the plaintiffs of the Michigan case in their filing. Allegedly, I have to add. Well, the Michigan Attorney General, she has said she had filed an amicus brief, but basically it's just a brief of her statement. It's a friend brief to the court stating, this is my expertise. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm arguing. Just putting it out there for the judges to accept, ruminate, and then maybe take in consideration when they do their ruling. She actually had filed it to seek to dismiss the state's case. Her state's cases that has been filed, contending that the plaintiffs have no standing in their claims. She said, challenging the decades-old statute in this frivolous manner is both irresponsible and abusive. Their actions are a clear attempt to sow doubt about the integrity of the election and suppress the legitimate votes of American citizens. She also noted that the ballots have already been sent out to Michigan voters and those that are living overseas, and many have returned them already, and they're in the process. And she has said that the RNC failed to file a timely notice of intent to sue under the Michigan Claims Court Act. Excuse me, Michigan Court of Claims Act. Let me get the wording right. Every state's different. Well, the judges in Michigan and North Carolina have rejected these challenges. As far as I can see, the suit in Pennsylvania is still pending. There might be an update that we could probably give out in the future, so just look out for that. As of Friday afternoon, last Friday, over 22,000 Michigan military and overseas voters have requested ballots for the general election, according to the data from the Michigan Secretary of State's office. Of that number, almost 8,000 voters have already completed and submitted their ballots to be counted. As of last Friday afternoon, 8,451 North Carolina absentee ballots have been requested by military members. 20,571 ballots have been requested by civilians living overseas, according to the data of the North Carolina State Board of Elections. Remember, DoD civilians can live overseas and still vote from overseas too, so that could be part of it. The civilians could also be counted as the military dependents. So just wanted to add that in there so you guys aren't wondering why are the civilians able to still elect from overseas, adding those people in there. So of those requests, 8,331 ballots have been sent to the military members, and 2,434 of those have been returned and accepted, the board said. So there are a lot of things that have already been in the process, and they still need to be counted on the day of election. And we'll see on what happens with the courts on how they actually will process them as we are upcoming to the election. Now, why is possibly the RNC is targeting absentee ballots? They are targeting absentee ballots in battleground states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, which is quite interesting because the states that actually often have the most absentee ballots, California, Florida, and Washington State. Also very big areas for military personnel, military and veterans. So why are the RNC targeting absentee votes? Well, back in 2016, the exit polls, per the New York Times, veterans voted for Trump by a margin of 61% to 34%. However, after that, many voters changed their allegiance, possibly because January 6th, possibly because of how they felt about the administration. Everybody has their reasons. Leading up to the 2020 election, Military Times and Syracuse University surveyed actually active duty troops indicated that Joe Biden had a slight edge over President Trump among the military community. At that time, it was 41% for Biden, 37% for Trump, and then 13% for the third-party candidate. Good, solid drop. A solid 50% of active duty troops had an unfavorable or very unfavorable view of the commander-in-chief at the time, per the same 2020 Military Times survey. In a later survey in October, it indicated that Trump had a wide lead of 59% among veterans of 55 and older, but for the younger groups, but not for the younger groups. On election day, the vote share among veteran voters had fallen to 54% for Trump and increased to 44% for Biden. 10-point swing. And we've had another 4 years. We've also, many people have experienced another 4 years under Biden, given Biden's not running, but Kamala Harris is running, who has been under President Biden's, say, liege during that process. So what is all about with these laws? What's the reason why, pretty much where are we at on the reasoning for the suit? What's going on here? So Congress passed a law in 1986 that was signed by then President Ronald Reagan, requiring states to allow certain groups of citizens to register and vote absentee in federal elections. This is known as the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. It applies to military members, their family, and U.S. citizens living outside of the country. In 2020, states sent more than 1.2 million ballots to military and overseas voters. Of those, more than 900,000 were returned, nearly 890,000 were counted, according to the data collected by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. Before 2016, military members and eligible family members represented most of these voters, according to the commission. But that has shifted slightly. In 2020, overseas citizens accounted for 57% of registered voters, and overall 40% of all military and overseas ballots were cast in 3 states: California, Florida, and Washington. That shift could possibly explain why Trump and other Republicans may be turning on the program. That and the polls that have been going out, that's been leaning more towards Democratic. Younger veterans and military members are known to go more for lean more Democrat side. So there is a way that they're trying to focus on challenging the vote to possibly discount it. The Federal Voting Assistance Program, which supports military and overseas voters, estimates that 2.8 U.S. citizens of voting age were living overseas in 2022. That number has probably only grown since then. So we got to keep a good eye out on what's going on. The courts are still going to be battling in North Carolina. I wouldn't be surprised that there may be suits also coming up in Florida, because Florida is still a teeter-tottering battleground state. Not just saying that because I'm a Floridian, but it is pretty close on what's going on. Because in Florida, the amount of registration for GOP for the RNC has actually increased and outnumbered the Democrats for the first time. But there has been a big swing and a big boost in the polls in the last month going towards Kamala Harris. So we have to keep an eye out to see that possibly might happen. And I just hope to God we don't have another ballot counting fiasco that we had over 20 years ago. Please, let's not do that one again. But we'll see. Thank goodness, mentioning of that, thank goodness with Georgia that they have actually been able to repeal the rule of the hand counting requirement for the ballots. So it will be done by machines. So that one will be much better because the hand counts have been shown to actually have greater errors. If anybody has done it in inventory, you have to inventory at least 5 times to get it right 3 times. So just letting you know, many veterans probably already know what I'm talking about. And so we'll see how this goes. And so everybody, please make sure that you know how to vote, you know where to register to vote. Go ahead and look up, am I registered to vote? I can already look up some of the websites. And many states already allow that you can register to vote on the day of the actual election. I was actually able to do that at one point when I didn't realize that my registration was not updated. So I was able to get my registration done on the day of the general election and then vote. You can do that in some states. Make sure to check and also look up how to register and check with your state first. Many states have already started early voting. So if those are people that are worried about trying to get into vote and on actual election day, God have mercy on you if you decide to do it on that day, because it will be very busy. I highly recommend you to go first thing in the morning if you do decide to do that. But many states are allowing to allow to vote early. Most of these states that allow you to vote early, it doesn't matter what poll station you go to, any poll station, but double check with your state. And then you can look up where the poll stations are. They're most often at libraries, not post offices, but near the post offices, and different areas for your city, county, and state buildings. So definitely look those up. There are areas to actually get rides, ride to vote. Look that up, and they can actually provide free rides for you on election day. They may also be starting to give you rides, free rides prior to. So you can check that if you don't have any transportation to get to those locations. And always double check on what you're going to vote on. Every state, city, county, any type of municipality, they also have other ballot measures when you go in to vote. So I highly recommend to find out what's going to be on the ballot for you, because that is going to change a lot on what you're going to decide, because there might be something coming up on the ballot that you have no idea about, and you might need to get some information, look up both sides of the arguments, trying to figure out which one would be best for you, what you feel morally, what you think is best as a citizen of your state, city, local municipality. Always double check these things and try to educate yourself before you go. Write them down if you want to, because I will forget, and I know you guys forget. I have notes just to help me with this. So just trying to remind yourself which stuff are there. Many poll stations and ballots spots actually have a little pamphlet about the different ballot measures. I remember when I voted in Washington State, they had a whole newsletter form that you can actually read on the different people that are going up for election, all the ballot measures. You can actually read the actual wording for most of them. And then you can also double check on the histories of the different people that are basically the resumes that are actually running for the election. It's really important to look these people up. They could be the judges. They could be in different state, local boards. And many of them have also may say that they're partisan and nonpartisan, but they really could be partisan. If they are incumbents, you can also look up their voting records on your state's actual legislature's website. Look those people up, look up their voting record, and you can always double check on what is going on with them, so you know which one may be best for you as your elected official. I hope we can all make it until the next election. We have less than 2 weeks. And but I will warn you guys, the ballots are not going to be finished counting on the day of like we're so used to. But the thing is that there are more and more people, higher percentages than possible from 2016, 2020, and all the way up to actually, so there's going to be more ballots that needs to be counted, more to be processed, and most likely, many places are not going to decide whether the vote happens or will actually which way it's going to sway. I'm going to give it a week just to be safe. Give it a week. Make sure to have your appointments with your therapist if you need it, and make sure you take your medications. Stay healthy and hydrated, and make sure that you can handle what's going on. Okay, everybody, stay out there and have a great week. Thank you.